Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Well, hey friends, another episode of Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast is up for you today with a Turquoise Talk guest, Jen Smith. She is a personal finance expert and the co-host of the top-rated Frugal Friends podcast. Since paying off $78,000, yes, of debt in 2 years, Jen has been on a mission to help people spend in alignment with their values and live for today while saving for tomorrow. She's the author of 2 best-selling books on controlling your spending and paying off debt, the No Spend Challenge Guide, and Pay Off Your Debt for Good. We had a great conversation around the word frugal, and how being frugal is very different from being cheap. It's going to be a great episode for you. So grab your pen and paper or put those earbuds in, start folding that laundry, taking that walk, whatever you're doing. You're going to enjoy this episode. So let's get to it. Welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. I am your host, Martine Williams, and your CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And today we have another amazing Turquoise Talk guest to talk to us today about frugality. Am I saying that word right? Like when I'm reading it, I'm like, is that how you say it?
I know, right? It's something you read so often and say so little. It's like, is that really the word? Yes, really frugality.
Frugality. Okay. So my guest today is Jen Smith, and I'm just getting to know her myself. So I'm super excited for this conversation because I think part of simplifying and remixing mompreneur life is finding those ways where we can simplify and minimize distractions and be, super smart with our finances, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. So tell us a little bit about you, Jen, your family, where you live, how you became an entrepreneur, and how you came into this kind of theme that you have for your business.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Jen, and I'm the co-host of the Frugal Friends podcast. And me and my husband and my 2 sons, we live in St. Petersburg, Florida. But back before I had children, I was a acupuncturist. And so I had a lot of student loan debt from acupuncture school. And my husband also had student loan debt. And when we got married, we decided to pay it off. And I say we, but it was mostly he. And he had to gently coax me to get on board. But we had $78,000 of debt. And at the time we started paying it off, my husband was unemployed because he had just graduated.
Yeah.
I was a part-time employed because there was not enough acupuncture to go around as a full-time employee. So we were just not in a place to be paying off debt. But we decided to start anyway. We just started where we were. Yeah. And what we thought was going to take us 5 years ended up taking us 2 years to pay off $78,000 of student loan debt. And so that's what got me interested in personal finance. And eventually I left acupuncture and started freelancing personal finance writing. And so that kind of led me to doing a lot of writing. I wanted to do something for myself, but I don't want to do any more writing. So that's what led me to the podcast. And I met Jill, my co-host. She was taking a road trip with her husband. They were living in an RV at the time to save money for her grad school education. And we just bonded. She was not in the personal finance space at all, but her husband worked in audio. And so he's like, you guys should start a podcast together. I said, that's a horrible idea. Why would Jill start a personal finance podcast? I'm a writer.
Yeah.
But if I ever did start a podcast, I'd call it Frugal Friends because I love alliteration. And frugality is something that not a lot of personal finance experts want to talk about. It's not the sexy finance topic like investing, crypto, side hustles. Like those are all much sexier and much more profitable as a creator. But I just felt like there was just a need for people to know that you could embark on these big financial goals, these big financial changes, lifestyle changes, and not deprive yourself that you could live a really full life without buying everything that comes into your social media feed. And that is how Frugal Friends came to be what it is today.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so awesome. And one thing right off the bat that I want to make sure that listeners didn't miss is that you didn't know how this was going to happen. You didn't know how you were going to, decrease your debt and work through that. You just started, like you didn't try to figure it all out in the beginning. It was like, you just knew this is something that you wanted to do. And you and your husband went to work doing that. And I think so many times as entrepreneurs, especially in the finance space, it's like, we don't know all the things. We don't know what we don't know. And so we just kind of, let's just sweep that under the rug for another day. And then you realize that your expenses are more than your income coming in. And then you're, like you said, you have influencers that are in your ear all day long, 24/7, 365, that make you think you have to have that business gadget, or you have to have this thing to make sure that you grow your business successfully, or you have to have, this method or whatever. And it's just like, we're so inundated all the time by all of these things. And I think it's just a beautiful start that you just started. You didn't know everything. You just started with what you knew at the time. And that's really important for people to hear is, you make a decision based on what you know at the time, and you do your best, and you have your back, and you make it work.
Yeah, I think especially as entrepreneurs, but in life in general, we do what I call procrastinating. So we will spend money to procrastinate doing what we really need to do.
Yes.
And I see this so often in business, like everybody buying all the gadgets, all the tech, all the courses, all the software, everything that's shiny and new.
Yeah.
And procrastinate doing like the real gritty day-to-day work that could be done with half of that software.
Yeah.
Half of that tech, half of those courses.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think this like frugality has been a blessing and a curse, because it's kind of made me not buy some of the tech and courses and stuff that maybe I should have invested in a little earlier.
Right.
But definitely saved me a ton of money. I would take that over watching other people who have just bought everything and inundated themselves with knowledge and gadgets and kind of overwhelmed themselves into not succeeding.
Yeah. It's almost like that's why the fitness industry is a bazillion-dollar industry, because it's always like that next best thing is the thing that's going to help you lose the weight. And I'm like, it all works if you work it. I mean, that treadmill that's however many years, years old that was introduced, it's going to work if you work it and don't use it as a clothes rack. Yep. So it's just like, we don't have a knowledge problem. Most of us, we have an implementation problem. And so we just have all this knowledge that just sits in our, our course bank. I mean, I love course. I'm a life learner. And so I definitely am one of those people who default to learning. Sometimes when I'm either feeling fearful to start, or, I feel like I don't have all of the details to get started, I definitely default into, I just need to learn more. But I know that about myself now. So I catch myself. I'm like, no, girl, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
What can you do today? What can you do today?
I will default into learning or research, but I have to make sure that if I am not doing the task, I'm at least delegating it to someone, because you just got to dive in and do the stuff. Earlier rather than later.
Yeah. And do it messy, and don't allow yourself to buy one more thing until you've actually implemented on the other thing that you just purchased.
Yeah, we are probably the worst. We have the worst podcasting setup. I don't know if you show this video, but I put sound panels up behind me and they all fell down except one. And look, and I don't have, this is the worst background I've ever had in my entire 6-year career. And here I am.
It's okay. Listen, I've recorded from my closet before, so it's all good.
We prop mics and laptops on books. Like we are scrappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been so beneficial for us because we're able to put our mental energy and our physical energy into things that move the needle.
Yeah.
Instead of things that just make us feel like we're moving the needle, but aren't really.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me the story behind getting shingles leading you to this space of frugality. Like there's definitely a story there.
Oh, yeah.
So share this with us.
Yeah. So in this 2-year process to pay off debt, I didn't want to change my spending. So I was the reluctant one in paying off debt. And I gradually caught on. It took a good long conversation, but I was like, I'll do this, but I'm not going to change the way I spend. I'm already spending the least, like I'm buying generic, I'm eating at happy hour. Like I'm doing the most for the least.
Right.
And so I was committed to doing every side hustle under the sun, working 80-hour weeks, because I thought if I could just increase my income, then I can solve this problem.
Right.
And that lasted for 2 months, and I contracted shingles from the stress. And that's when I realized this isn't a one facet problem. Yeah. This is a multifaceted approach kind of solution is what this is going to take. And so I started to think about how could I change my spending in a way that didn't leave me feeling deprived, but was more intentional. Yeah. That I could still spend on the things that I loved without spending on, because most of the stuff I spent money on were not things I loved. They were just things that I bought in the moment, impulse purchases, right? Influenced purchases. And so that was what really became the core of Frugal Friends is how do we eliminate all the fluff and keep and really celebrate purchasing the things we love. We don't think about celebrating, figuring out who you are, figuring out what you love and spending freely without guilt on that. Yeah. And if you find out what you don't love, then you can celebrate what you do.
Right, right. One thing I want to highlight in that story is the impact of stress and what it does to did to your body, and for you, it was shingles. For others, it's burnout. And, for others, it's depression. Others, it's increasing their anxiety. And it's just become like, I feel like in the mompreneur space, which is why I started this podcast, is it's become part of like the hustle culture, right? Like that's the only way is to hustle 365, 24/7 and to sacrifice everything on the altar of that, your health, your relationships, all of like you have to, for a season, you have to do this. And now I'm all about working hard, but I'm not about burning yourself out to where you're, the stress is there. Stress is going to be always there, but you can manage your energy and manage your beliefs and manage your mindset to where it doesn't take over like it did for you. And so for the mompreneurs that are listening, like you tried it, right? And I feel like we all try it. Yeah. We try to like, let me work more so I don't have to change, this thing that I know I'm supposed to change. Let me just overwork it. It's kind of like people who try to outwork a bad diet. You can't do it. You cannot do it. So I just want to pause and let people understand the impacts that stress has on our bodies, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And because it's become so accepted that this is just the way life is as a mompreneur, you're just supposed to be the mom and the wife and the CEO, and you just burn the candle at both ends. Eventually it's going to hit you square between the eyes. Something is going to hit you square between the eyes. And for some people, it's the shattered relationship, right? They get to that level of success. They look back and they have no one to enjoy it with because they burned all those relationships. For others, it's their physical health. And then you're like, now I can't even really enjoy this success because I'm dealing with anxiety and I'm dealing with heart disease, or I'm dealing with, all the other things that come with stress. So I just really wanted to highlight that, and not to like highlight your shingles episode, but I do think it was a wake up call for you. And for you, it was something that you were able to repair and able to recover from. Some people, it's, the body keeps score, and it will keep score of the stress that you're having. So thank you for being willing to kind of share that was a turning point for you.
Yeah, I'm glad I let it be a turning point and that I didn't just go back in. Part of it was that I still had peripheral nerve damage. So anytime I would get stressed for like the next couple of years, I'd feel that area. Yeah. But I think what you're saying reminds me of this bit that I heard. I think it's Michelle Wolf, the comedian, saying she didn't want to be a mom, that she wanted a career. And people were saying, but you can have it all.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, yeah, but all is not good. Like, have you ever left an all-you-can-eat buffet and been like, oh, I'm really glad I ate all that. I'm really glad I went back for the short ribs.
Right.
And like, all is, we believe it to be the goal.
Yeah.
All is not good.
Yeah.
Prioritizing and choosing what's most important makes things important. If everything is important, nothing is important.
That's right. They've heard me say that before on the podcast. So thank you for bringing that back up. Hey, mompreneur friends. 'Tis the season, right? To juggle it all: business, family, and festivities. Well, guess what? I have an ultimate gift just for you, a free resource to design the holiday that is successful and less stressful. So what will you say and feel like at the end of the holidays? Will you be excited about all the memories made while still running your business, or will you be filled with regret? You get to decide. So I want to encourage you to go to the link in the show notes, or you can go to martinewilliams.com/holiday list and grab your stress-free holiday toolkit. Inside, you're going to find a holiday season priority list. You're going to find 5 clarifying questions to answer to create the successful versus stressful holiday, some time management tips, a mindset mastery, how to shift your mindset, and 4 powerful ways to say no. It's completely free. I know you're ready to slay the season. I know you want to say goodbye to the holiday overwhelm and hello to a season of joy, success, and quality time with your loved ones. So dive into the holiday toolkit now and design the holiday you've always dreamed of, because this season is not just about surviving, it's about thriving, friends. Cheers to a stress-free and successful holiday season. So we know you weren't always frugal. And so like for someone who's listening and they're like, okay, I don't want to get, I don't want my stress level to get to that point. But I'm having a hard time figuring out how to, like you said, not deprive myself, but also be smart with my choices. So how did you make that shift? What were some things that you did initially to kind of help you? Because I think it's a mindset shift first, right? You have to start there first. What are your beliefs about what you really need or what you really want? Like you said, getting really clear on what you want. So can you kind of talk us through what your process was for that?
Yeah. So we kind of boiled it down to this practice that we call values-based spending. And it starts in your personal life, but then it also bubbles over into your business. And it's basically finding what you love, what you value. It starts with maybe core values, figuring out kind of what you love most in life. So community, beauty, achievement, all those core values and beliefs, but also can just be thinking like, I really hate doing dishes and I'm not a foodie. So I'm going to accommodate my food budget to have less nice meals out and more takeout, so stuff like that. Right. That's personally mine. I hate doing dishes. So that's a core value of mine. Not doing dishes. So finding that stuff that kind of is unique to you, makes you, and then trying to shape all of your spending around that. Looking at your past transactions and seeing what was in alignment with those things, what was out of alignment, and then what was the catalyst for that spending? So what was the trigger? We talk about James Clear's habit loop a lot. Like he has these triggers or cues for habits. Yep. So much of our spending is habitual. And you can look back at what the triggers were and figure out why you did that spending. So that's kind of the process that we go through to figure out what is our spending going to be? What are we going to celebrate? And what are we going to eliminate? And then that kind of bubbles over into our business when we're saying, okay, what are we going to do more of? And what are we going to do less of? So what is the stuff that's making us money? Jill says, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. What are those things? And then what are things that aren't making us money? But then what are those things that maybe are making us money, but aren't worth the time? Like we don't value putting our effort into. Yeah. So that's kind of how we've seen the values-based spending evolve into our own business even.
Do you have a specific type of like spreadsheet or software or anything you use to look at those numbers? Are you just looking at like at QuickBooks? Are you looking at like your budget? Like
we love a good old fashioned Google sheet.
Yeah.
Like that's us.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to, if you want to do a transaction inventory, which we recommend everyone do a 90-day transaction inventory. Just look at all your transactions from the last 90 days. It's going to encompass most of those outlier expenses, most of those habitual expenses. So if you just go into your bank transactions, you can download a CSV of your bank statement sometimes, and you can just upload it to a Google Sheet, sort it by like alphabetical so you can see groups. You can sort it by date so you can see kind of maybe if you had like a really stressful week, you made more purchases than normal. So putting all that into a Google Doc and seeing what each trigger was for each transaction. Yeah. And then also looking at your big expenses. So your biggest expenses are housing, transportation, and food, typically.
Yeah.
We think a lot about food because we make those decisions every day. Most of us eat every day.
Right.
Housing and transportation, we don't think about those transactions as much because we're making them once every 5-10 years, if you're lucky. But those typically cost you more in the long run than any food decision you're going to make. The type of house you get, the interest rate you get on your home could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over 30 years, where lattes, getting one every weekday is going to maybe cost you about $1,500 a year.
Right.
So not just looking at these discretionary expenses, but also looking at how these big, quote unquote, fixed expenses also align with your values. Like, do I need this much house? Do I need to be in this neighborhood? Do I need this much car? Do I need this much insurance coverage? Like just, and the answer can always be yes, but the mindset is to get creative and just ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not why do I have this? Because that kind of gets us on the defense. We need to defend our spending purchases, but asking like more open questions, like what is the purpose of having this? What do I feel it gets me? Is it actually getting me what I wanted, what I intended it to? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really, really good. And the simplicity of it, because you could do the same thing for your credit card statements, and you get to see the categories and all of that. So it's almost like, one of the things that I have my clients do, especially if their goal is weight loss or they're trying to make some healthier habits. I'm like, okay, we just need to do a food log, for 30 days or, for a week and just get a good picture of what you're actually putting into your body. It's the same thing with your finances. We can walk around with our head in the sand and act like everything is fine. But in a lot of times, especially as females, we kind of give that off to our spouse, to our husband or our dad or someone else in the family. And so I think that's also an important thing that I want to ask you about for women to kind of get more information and understanding about their finances. But I think what you just shared is so simple. So you just have to get an awareness first, where it's going out, where it's coming in, and then where are the areas where that you see it's just habitual because you've always bought that or you've always done it that way. Doesn't mean you have to moving forward because you have new goals for your finances. You can always shift that. So thank you for sharing that simplicity. Because I think a lot of times we get lost in the logistics of, okay, do I have to have QuickBooks? Do I have to have a CPA? Which we recommend both of those things probably, but you can start as simply as downloading it into a Google Sheet, or if you're an Excel girl, into Excel. And if you're not, I guarantee you have a friend somewhere that loves spreadsheets. Ask her for some help to get that for you. There's someone who loves doing these kinds of things, and it may not be your area of strength, but we got to stop saying that that's not an area of strength of mine and actually get more knowledge around it so that you can implement. I do think this is an area. Do you agree that not most, but a lot of women in business or entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs, this is an area they don't really want to talk about. They don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of it because either they're fearful what they're going to see, kind of like when you do the food log, you're like, it's going to show that I had that donut, or that I had that scoop of ice cream. It's kind of the same thing with finances. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think we're all afraid at some level to do things that we're not good at, especially when there are some things we are very good at. We'd rather just stay in our wheelhouse and do more of what we're good at. But just because you're not gifted and don't desire to be gifted in one area does not excuse you from participating. Like in something as important as your finances. You don't have to love it. You can hire it out once you understand it. But it doesn't excuse you from the responsibility as a person who spends money, as a business owner, from at least understanding it and being on top of it, because you are the only one that cares about your money. Even if you have a spouse or children, nobody cares more about your money than you do. And your family's money than you do. And women are the people making the spending decisions in the households. It's for decades. I mean, advertisers know that. That's why we're advertised to so heavily. Because we're making the spending decisions. And so we don't need to stop making spending decisions. We don't need to stop spending. We just need to learn and grow in what we're spending on and spend better.
So I think there's a correlation in frugal and cheap. So can you explain the difference in that for someone who's listening? Like, well, if I'm frugal, people are going to just think I'm being cheap.
Not the C word. Not the C word. We have, and we love this phrase so much, we put it on a tote bag, that we are frugal, not cheap. And cheap is low cost at any expense. So the expense, so where you lower your monetary expense, you increase your expense of time or exploitation, human exploitation, resource exploitation. So while there is a lower monetary cost for something cheap or being cheap, there is a higher total cost, where frugal takes into account the entire cost of something. So the space it takes up in your home, the time it takes to achieve that savings, or, the time you need to work in order to afford something, it takes into account the labor that went into creating the thing. And it doesn't mean that we are relegated to buying pricey, organic, sustainable, all the, greenwashing terms. It doesn't mean we're relegated to spend extra to buy all those. It means that we are aware and we make conscious choices about how we spend our money. We vote with our dollars. We are so concerned with one day every 4 years that we vote, but every other day of every other year, we are voting with our dollars. And so saying no to things when they are unethically sourced, coming from unethical companies, and just being a better steward of all of your resources, not spending 14 hours clipping coupons to save $40 or to get a stockpile of stuff you don't need, all of that. And maybe you do love stockpiles, maybe you do use them, and that is worth your time. That's great. It's not for me. It's going to be different for everyone too. But it's being good resources of your time, your mental energy, your physical space, and your natural resources in addition to your money.
It's like informed decision making, around your purchases is what it sounds like to me. It's like you've done the process, you're aware of what you're spending, why you're spending it, all the things, the mindset work. And now you can for me, it's like you can show up with more confidence on the decisions you are making with what you're doing with your money, because you've done that work. Right. Like you're not just, not that you don't still have some impulse buys. I'm sure you do, but it's like you just overall have more information and you're making more informed, intentional decisions around your finances.
I still make impulse purchases for sure. There's room in the budget for impulsivity. Not everybody is a detailed planner and loves to stick to a rigid budget. I say some, and I mean most. I love spontaneity. And so I will, I'll make an impulse purchase, and I will shop fast fashion occasionally because I am a minimalist. So I don't buy a ton of stuff. And so I have prioritized the resources for me and my family that I feel are important, where we have listeners where sustainability is their most important. And so they will sacrifice other things so that they can spend more money on that. It's finding the right priorities for you that you feel good about and that you can afford.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say the very first step is for someone they've listened to us talk and they're like, okay, it's not going to be as daunting as I think it's going to be, or maybe it is, and I'm just going to deal with it. I've decided that this is important enough for me to deal with it. What would you say is the very first step they should take once they get through listening to this?
I would start with your personal spending and your personal finances before you start with your business, because those habits that you do in your personal life are much more frequent than the ones you make in your business. So they're going to catch on quicker if you just focus on one thing at a time. Yeah. We have this habit of wanting to transform everything all at once. Yeah. But if you try to do that, nothing gets changed. So work on one thing at a time. So if it's personal spending, you're taking that 90-day transaction history first before you start real-time tracking your spending. You want to know, it's much easier to track your spending in real time when you know what you have a history of. So I would say start there. Yeah. Look at the triggers for all of those transactions so that in real time, you can be aware of what to be looking for that triggers your spending. When you're like, oh, I see that I am buying a coffee every time I go see my mother-in-law. And that's every week, once a week when I drop off the kids there.
Yeah.
Why is that? Probably for moral support. But is there another way that I can get that without spending money? That way, the next time you do that action, you can at least be getting creative. And maybe the first time you're like, nah, man, I really need the iced coffee. It's not happening this time. But then you're aware and you're looking for creative ways to meet the need without spending money. Yeah. So that's kind of our first step into it. And then once you're developing those better spending habits and knowing yourself more, it flows into the other resources. It flows into everything else.
Yeah. Because you start catching yourself. It's one of the things when I'm coaching my clients, especially around their mindset and their thoughts and what they're saying to themselves. I'm like, the first few times, I just need you to write it down. Don't judge it. Don't shame it. Just write down what your thoughts are about this situation or this decision or whatever. And so then they start catching themselves sooner, right? It's not that you never have these negative thoughts anymore, that you're never going to, spend something that you probably shouldn't, but you're starting to catch yourself sooner. So you can make an informed, I know that I'm feeling this way and I know this is a trigger and I'm going to buy it anyway. You know that, right? You're not beating yourself up later that you shouldn't have done it. You made an informed decision. I know this is not what I should be spending my money on. I'm doing it anyway because this, but then the next time you'd be like, no, I really don't want to go down that route. So it's just having that awareness is what a lot of things you've been talking about is just really becoming aware of yourself, of the things you like, the things you don't like, being really honest with yourself, which is what we all need when you're trying to personally develop, which is what this is. It's a part of your personal development journey. It's part of your professional development journey. And we have to be okay with being honest with ourselves because in that awareness, you can move forward. But if we keep our head in the sand and we think, oh, nothing's wrong here or nothing's happening or there's nothing I can do about it, then you just keep moving forward in the same habits, right? They call it insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's called insanity, right? But we do it because I think this is the work people don't want to do, whether it's on weight loss or finances or in their marriage or in that, they don't want to slow down long enough to really dig deep into their thought life and dig deep into what is causing this behavior. You're not just now you're just doing it on impulse, but it started from a thought that you had about your finances or about that purchase or about that food group, right? And so how can we get into that work first so that your actions change? Yeah. We try to change our actions first, right? We try to do that first.
Yeah. It's instilled in us that if we take a pause, that if we stop, we've failed in some way or that we are going to fail. Yeah. I remember I wanted to take a year off in college to, travel the country with a nonprofit, do my gap year. And my mom was horrified. Yeah. She's like, you're never going back to school. I was like, I am. I for sure am. And I did.
Yeah.
But we've been instilled our whole lives that if you pause, you failed or you will fail.
Yeah.
When really pausing, action is not the goal. Action in the right direction is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're busy and you're taking action, you're not necessarily succeeding if you don't pause and reevaluate if the action you're taking is still in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. You're climbing up the right ladder. You know how many times we end up at the wrong place because we weren't, like you said, being guided and directed in the right direction. We were just busy. Mm-hmm. We're just busy instead of being in business and doing things that grow your business. We can get busy doing lots of things. And my mompreneurs that are listening, they hear me say that all the time. Are you in business or are you busy? There's a very clear difference. And we've all been there, shuffling papers, scrolling on social, all the things that make us feel productive. But if it's not getting and pushing the needle in the right direction, then you're just busy for the sake of busy.
Yeah.
So tell me what you're most excited about in your business right now or in life in general as we wrap up.
Yeah. So we just launched over the summer, relaunched our newsletter. Mm-hmm. And so now it is a 3 times a week newsletter with freebies like free food promos, deals, money saving tips, values-based spending, insights. And so 3 times a week, our listeners can get, meal plan ideas, all a collection of goodies that we're loving. And we are really finding a lot of our listeners are loving the revamp. So it's called the Friend Letter, and you can get it at frugalfriendspodcast.com/friend letter. And it's free and we love it. It's so fun for us to write. So it's really fun for us to see our listeners love it. And that's how we made the Frugal Not Cheap tote bag, is that we have a referral program for our already listeners to get other people to sign up for the Friend Letter. After 5 referrals, then they can earn a Frugal Not Cheap tote bag.
I love it. It's
so good.
I love it. Well, we'll put the links to everything, how you can connect with Jen, and your podcast partner is, what's her name?
Jill.
Okay. We'll put all the links so you can connect with them. You can go listen to their podcast. You can get this freebie. I'll put all her social links too, because I know this is literally just like a little taste of what she has to offer to help you. So if you're wanting to go on this journey, and why not, right? Then definitely connect with them and let them guide and support you. This is their area of expertise, right? So let them help you be frugal, not cheap. Be frugal, not cheap. Love that. All right. Well, thank you again just so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and sharing your tips. I know that so many people are going to benefit from this episode. So thank you so much for coming on, Jen.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, friends. Well, I will catch you on the next episode. And until then, y'all know I'm believing in you always. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link. Share this episode or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.